Okay, so this is take 3. It's Mother's Day, May 12th, 2024, and I've got an episode that has nothing to do with Mother's Day. So it's called Rebuilding from False Accusations, Navigating Legal Storms and Emotional Tsunamis. It's about how to potentially rebuild your life after being accused of something you did not do. I've addressed that topic before on this podcast, but this time I'm going to get a little more into the legal entanglements aspect. I'm going to address that possibility. So, rebuilding your life after being wrongly accused of something can be incredibly challenging, emotionally taxing, and often feels like an uphill battle. I found a quote online by someone named Ed Batista. I don't know who the guy is exactly, but I found this quote from him, and it seems objectively true enough. Regardless of its source, the guy might be a perfect angel, or he might be a villain or a devil. I don't know. But anyway, he said, when we're in the grip of a threat response, we experience a host of physiological and psychological reactions. Our heart rate and blood pressure escalate. We're more likely to feel fear and anger, and we process information more quickly, all of which prime us to make decisions quickly and take immediate, decisive action. But speed has a cost, and in these situations, we also process information less accurately, and we're less effective at creative problem solving and collaboration. So, of course, it's just generalizing there. Sometimes maybe you will make a really great split decision, but often, it's a risky thing that happens when you're sort of in a chaotic situation. So it's usually best to stop and try to think things through. So here are some steps you might consider taking if you have the time and the resources at your disposal. You should consider seeking legal help. If you've been falsely accused of a crime, it's a good idea to seek legal representation immediately, or ASAP. A good lawyer can guide you through the legal process, defend your rights, and help clear your name. I don't think a lawyer can get you out of anything or everything. But, they say that it's a good idea to not talk that much or incriminate yourself. So while having a lawyer is crucial to navigating the legal system, their ability to get you out of everything depends on various factors, obviously. That includes the specifics of the case, the evidence against you, the laws involved, and the effectiveness of your legal defense. The defense counsel can only do so much, and obviously, as I'm talking about this in a very general sense, I'm going to assume that you are innocent if you're being accused of something and listening to this. And, I don't know your specific situation. I'm generalizing here. So having not talked or incriminating yourself is indeed a good start, as it reduces the evidence the prosecution can use against you. They can't use a verbal slip-up, for example. So specifically, there's a case that's interesting here. It's called Malloy versus Hogan. It was a Supreme Court case from 1966. They said, when determining if state officers properly obtained a confession, one must focus on whether the statements were made freely and voluntarily, without any direct or implied promise or improper influence. Malloy also incorporated the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination against the states. So, that's the classic line, I plead the Fifth. That's something you really want to consider, just keeping your mouth shut. Obviously, there are people who just have a hard time doing that. They dig themselves into a deeper hole, but that's really one of the best pieces of advice. Maybe you need time to take naps. Well, if you're being accused of something, that's a good time to just take naps more, spend less time out in public, where you could say or do something that could further get you in trouble. So, another factor to consider when you're looking at your situation is, I hate to say this because it's sort of rooted in stereotypes, but people who come from very poor backgrounds or, people who aren't super rich tend to get treated more harshly by the system in a lot of cases, or they have less adequate defense, whereas the privileged and well connected might get the best legal help that money can buy and get reduced charges or slap on the wrist sort of punishment. So that's if you're finding yourself not being, a hyper privileged person, you'll want to be even more cautious. Now, that does happen a lot of the time. It doesn't happen all the time where the privileged people get away with it, but it's often the case, very often. And, evidence is a factor here. Even if you haven't incriminated yourself directly, there may still be other evidence against you, such as physical evidence, witness testimony, or circumstantial evidence. You'll want to have adequate legal knowledge and strategy, not just on your legal team, but for yourself. Now's a good time to actually look into the stuff yourself a little bit, so you can maybe accumulate your own ideas of how to defend yourself. So a good lawyer knows the law, procedures, and strategies to use in your defense, but it's not going to hurt if you know some of that stuff as well. And lawyers can identify weaknesses in the prosecution's case, challenge evidence, and present arguments in your favor. But again, if you can do that, like if you can help in that process, that's only gonna really be in your favor. What can you say about it? And negotiation skills. In many cases, a lawyer may negotiate with the prosecution for a plea deal or a reduced sentence, which could be the most favorable outcome given the circumstances. You might want to consider that option. Of course, it can lead to some unsatisfying outcomes, and sometimes it could even lead to prison time. But you have to weigh your options. And of course, courtroom skills also come into play. If your case goes to trial, your lawyer's ability to present your case effectively in court, cross-examine witnesses, and argue legal points can significantly impact the outcome. So, one of the good things about a lawyer is that they have legal resources. A lawyer, they have access to other experts and investigators, which can strengthen your defense. So while a skilled lawyer can greatly improve your chances, there are no guarantees in the legal system. Keep that in mind at all times. There's typically not going to be some random smoking gun sort of evidence that shows up if your case ever makes it into the courtroom. I mean, that's sort of a myth. That doesn't happen hardly ever. I guess it can happen technically, but typically, when you're in a courtroom, you see the evidence beforehand. It gets approved by, the relevant legal teams, and you get a chance to know what you're being accused of. That's actually one of the rights that you're supposed to have. You're supposed to know what sort of charges you're being faced with and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit funny that I did this episode because I just watched Jurassic Park, and that they often refer to the blood-sucking lawyer in that movie, and the guy gets chomped on by a T-Rex while sitting on the toilet, so he's humiliated. And just in general, society has kind of negative things to say about lawyers, but sometimes, if you can afford one and you're in some sort of trouble, well, go ahead and get one because they sure can help. And fortunately, I've never needed to use a lawyer myself, but they can be a potential lifesaver as much as we can, belittle them or, have mixed feelings about them or what have you. They might be the difference between being free and having to live in a prison. So that's it for this episode. I don't think I really have much more to say about it. So, yeah, have a nice day.